With the Frostworm name now being taken by Kislev's ground-based ice lizard, the Norskins now have access to the confusingly named Chaos Frost Dragon, which actually does make sense now that I think about it in terms of naming convention, but still a little bit of a mouthful. Today, Slade, the legend himself, is going to be taking a very heavy rank 9 single entity build here. Of course, that means the Cold Voider Regiment of Renown. We've also got the Soul Crusher Regiment of Renown here for the Mammoth, and the Chaos Frost Dragon, respectively. Famir Balefiend of Shadows, and a War Shrine Mammoth, of course, rank 9 as well for that sweet physical resistance, which definitely will synergize for an absolute monster bash like this. To support, he's got a couple of Norscan Warhounds with poison there, and it looks like the Regiment of Renown Moss of Savagery Skin Wolves as well. Dark Elves here. Hot Crone Hellebron on her Chariot mount, which is a very unusual pick these days, but we do also have a Sorceress of Death, bunch of Witch Elves. Blackguard are going to be very much needed here, but only 2 of them means they can only do so much, especially whereas all these monsters can basically just path onto a single infantry unit and murder them. Whereas, yeah, they can only have so many infantry models in contact at the same time, right? But not much to it. Slade just charges on in here. Of course, the Witch Elves don't enrage anymore, so this is a little bit less scary than it would have been in the past for you to just charge in here like this, right? We do see a Fury of Cain being cast there. The buffs from Hellebron as she charges in, that melee attack buff and everything will be pretty significant. You take a look at the Blackguard's unit card here. They're up to 65 melee attack, 78 weapon strength. Wow. Weapon strength buffs are quite significant. You can see the Soul Crusher here getting bursted down during that time. Spirit Leech as well to help finish them off, but a Pit of Shades, of course, and we're just going to soak up all the colors here as these units get into a big old bloody brawl. Of course, the Pit of Shades will be very essential for busting up blobs of infantry in a build like this. Could even call it a build. I mean, technically it is a build, but Murderous Prowess going to kick off only 2 minutes into the match here. You can see Dark Elves have lost a significant number, like 300-ish, whereas, obviously, there's not a lot of models to lose from the Norscan build. Those Warhounds chasing Scourge Runner Chariots out the distance there is definitely painful. Those Scourge Runner Chariots need to be taken off of skirmish, brought in close so they can shoot these single entities with their armor-piercing anti-large missiles. That said, there's so much anti-large infantry, Dark Elves can't necessarily be too worried, especially with the Crone Throne's buffs. And the Crone Throne itself, not really much of a single entity combatant. I don't know, the animations these days I don't think are as broken as they used to be. I think these little ranged attacks, yeah, the little Witch Elves now on the side actually do real ranged attacks, except do they still fire when they're out of ammunition? That'd be interesting. But anyway, yeah, the Crone Throne, decent weapon strength when it's all charged up, Murderous Mastery, and it doesn't affect weapon strength, but Blood Frenzy certainly does, and it's fully charged up right now at least. And, I mean, 60 melee attack, it's pretty decent, gonna be okay against other single entities, not crazy, but I don't see the Crone Throne super often these days, but let's see how much value it ends up getting in the late game there, of course. The thing to consider as well, if she's taken it, is the item here, which I don't believe so. No, actually. The item which gives sort of a Mortis aura, if you will. We'll take a look at that after the fact, but balance of power-wise, not looking great for Norsca. Let's get the banners out of the way, as it's all just basically in this big blob fight here. Single entities for Norsca trying to burst it out. They're all a little bit spread out right now. Slade manages to recollapse all of them back down. A little bit of a rear charge there from those Poison Hounds, trying to proc some extra terror for some of these units which are weak to it. Thank goodness the Blackguard are immune to Psychology proper, unlike many other elite halberds in the game. That's not going to stop them from just truly routing here, though, due to their leadership being smashed down. Cold Voider also. Speed debuffs means between its own AoE speed debuffs and Frostbite, obviously. A little bit of awkward pathing there as it kind of sidesteps out of combat. I have no idea what's happening, but let's not question it too much. Looks like the Chariots are causing some odd pathing there. Should be able to get back up into the air no problem, as long as we can get away from the Scourge Chariot model. But pretty much just Throg left at this point, as everything else for Norsca has been defeated or routed. Throg and the Cold Voider, of course, who does have still 2 breath attacks left. 1 for each head. And it's going to be trying to use them to great effect here. Is the Famir Balefiend also still around? That would be super critical as well. Looks like his leadership is broken currently, but he should come back. Only about 400 HP there, but still, it's something. And that breath attack impacts, does quite a bit of damage to the throne of the crone itself. Absolutely spectacular as the mammoth comes charging back on in. Still got a handful of skin wolves hanging around here as well. They're going to smash up those scourge chariots, no problem. The Deathcaster also having a hard time here, and suddenly the Crone Throne gets routed by Throg. Again, Frostbite's going to make sure that it can't get away from him. The War Shrine Mammoth manages to just barely survive with 600 HP. Let's see if it falls. Right now, it is giving a full 20% physical resistance to everything nearby, which is absolutely huge at this point. Yeah, I mean, those Pits of Shades there, 246 kills, almost 3,000 damage value, was what did a lot of the work here. But once the Crone Throne falls, that's going to be a pretty quick end, I would imagine. We still got this one Witch Elf, which overchased some unit on the side there. Coming back in, so we'll fast forward as they close the distance. Throg's going to go ahead and throw a nice vomit down the center. Oh, yeah. And charge on in. Mammoth just like pooping on the Crone Throne over there. Breath attack. A little bit of a swing and a miss there on the breath attack. That's okay, though. Cold Voider still did pretty decent work. Definitely. I mean, we'll see. A lot of the value, like I said, is going to come from the Pit of Shades there, busting up those blobs. But certainly, the War Shrine Mammoth did a pretty decent job. The Soul Crusher definitely got smashed there pretty hard. But the Cold Voider actually does pretty much pay for itself as well, which is nice to see. Yeah, Throg also 1,800 value there, so decent value spread across all the single entities, but that Pit of Shades, man, against those halberds that they got blobbed up, definitely did a lot of work, and the Witch Elves as well, obviously. Still, though, all of them managed to pay for themselves, which is kind of crazy to me. The Scourge Chariots, yeah, they also managed to pretty much pay for themselves. I mean, it's crazy to me how a lot of this stuff is cost-effective. I guess really the thing doesn't end up paying for itself really are the characters here, which even for a cheap Deathcaster is a little bit rough. I mean, obviously, hindsight 2020, but I generally tend to favor Lore of Fire here, although Lore of Death is competitive and very good. Fire is hard to go wrong with against Norsca. I mean, Burning Head's great against Norscan infantry. Flaming Sword of Ruin also helps against a lot of Norscan single entities, and yeah, especially where you don't have like a lot of AP missiles, you're going to be relying more on these melee units to get the work done. I think that Flaming Sword of Ruin, or, you know, even just fireballs, just kind of poking at various units can definitely accrue some nice value over time. But hard to say. Death is obviously very competitive, so you really can't go wrong with it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. I mean, it's definitely a very interesting one. What were we going to look at? We were going to look at something after the fact. You know, I actually forget. But let's just take a look here at a couple of things from this replay. First things first, for Norsca. Yeah, the Cold Voider, only 100 points extra over the base Frostworm makes this one actually one of the best value regiments of renown in the game, certainly. You get the rank 9 stats basically for free, and it also does give Guardian as well. So if you kind of factor in, you know, Guardian plus the Giver of Glory from the War Shrine, you can get up to 35% physical resistance on a Lord, and especially somebody like Throg, who has good regeneration, or, you know, even Wulfric himself with just a massive HP pool on the Mammoth. That can go a long way into making these relatively expensive Lords, you know, a lot more survivable, certainly. It does require you to bring two other very expensive single entities, which I think, you know, depending on tournament rule sets, you may not actually be able to take Wulfric on a Mammoth with these two. So you have to check on that. But Throg, at the very least, should. I mean, his base cost is only 1,600. I would think this would be fine. You know, especially just fight or die. Vomit, if you have the points for it, can be a nice little extra damage burst situationally. Not the best. Wintertooth Crown also Again, if you have the points for it, I don't know. It can be very good in the right situation, but I think this may be better in something like Domination, where like Unbreakable can make a big difference critically at a certain time in the battle. I don't know. Don't play a lot of Domination myself, so I couldn't say for certain, but it seems like that maybe be the case. I don't know. Regardless, though, yeah, that extra physical resistance from these two stacking is not something I had even really considered before. But yeah, it certainly seems like it definitely helped there, especially considering these two were the single entities that kind of hung around until the late game. I guess that kind of goes for if you're fighting against Norsca and you happen to come up against this specific set of single entities, definitely target the War Shrine Mammoth first, as it has the biggest physical resistance, especially if you can get it early on in the battle before it's charged up. You will have negated a lot of the value for it. It's also the most expensive of these three, and likewise, yeah, I mean, it's got that 10 leadership aura as well. Just in general, I think the War Shrine Mammoths, I'm coming around to some of the buffs they've gotten over time make them quite potent in a number of different ways, as long as they're not getting blasted by MP missiles, which, I mean, obviously the Dark Elves do have access to. Shades are probably the most scariest right now, I would say. I don't know. Dark Rider Repeater Crossbows and the Scourge Runner Chariots are both still pretty good, and they definitely... I mean, I think if the Scourge Runner Chariots maybe had stayed a little bit closer, had been able to manage those hounds a little bit in the earlier phase, maybe they could have made the difference there. But the Crone Throne's definitely an interesting one. This is what I was going to look at, the Cursed Blade here. So, yeah, it's strong versus single combatant, so it's kind of like a constant Final Transmutation aura, relatively. Well, the damage obviously is not as much as Final Transmutation, but you get damage scaling, right? Like Spirit Leech, Final Transmutation, right? It is constant damage. It's a little bit weird because it's conditional, though. It affects units that are losing in combat, and the Crone has to be in melee. So because of those two conditions, it's a little bit awkward to try and use in practice. It's also pretty expensive at 200 points. So I totally understand, you know, not necessarily wanting to take that per se, but I don't know if she had the Amulet of Darkfire, but that definitely would have helped in this situation, just to mitigate a little bit of that. I don't know if it would have made the difference. I mean, 20% is not that much spell resistance, but it would have helped negate some of the damage at the very least of those pits of shades, but still probably would not have been enough to salvage things. I don't know. The match was actually pretty close at the end of the day regardless, but 1850 for the Cauldron of Blood in and of itself. It does come pre-equipped with the Blood Frenzy. No, actually, you can remove that. So you can pretty much remove everything here. It does come with 5% of physical resistance of its own, I think, base on the cart, right? But yeah, the Crone's support abilities are really why you bring her. Gaze of Cain, just so fantastic. The Cursed Blade could be pretty decent as well. And then, yeah, herself, I mean, if she charges up with her own thing, she can be a decent single entity on her own right, but I mean, I would say at the very least just Gaze of Cain and the Crone Throne actually be pretty solid. I don't know, you could maybe option in yeah, the Cursed Blade if you want to take something. Again, it's a little bit situational, but you can definitely make this work. That probably would have gotten, again, hindsight 2020, in this specific replay, this probably would have made the difference actually between victory and defeat. Hard to say, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.